Hi, everybody. Welcome to season 2 of our OK Everyday podcast on how to make our lives okay every day with transactional analysis. Here from our home studios are Jason Brennan and Alexi Beck. Hey, Jason,
Hey, Ollie.
what do you think? How long is too long to say that this is season 2?
I don't mind because I'm just happy we have season two. So we can stay for a little bit longer, I think.
True, true. Listen, and today the topic of our conversation is
Strokes in action, the child ego state.
strokes in action, the child ego state. So what
Mm,
is
and
that about?
well, actually, by the way, listeners, if you listen to the previous one, I'd forgotten the name of the previous one. So I kind of fluffed it a bit, but it came back to me. Uh, but yeah, no, so strokes in action, the child ego state. So today, Ollie, we're going to look at obviously the child ego state. And what
Hmm.
do strokes sound like? So
Right.
if for the listeners who know what strokes are, that's great. But for those who don't, so stroke is a unit of recognition. So how do we give people, how do we recognize other people, right? Both
Right.
positive and negative, right? How do we recognize them in what's known as conditional or unconditional? Right. So
Right.
what are the things attached to giving somebody some recognition? And of course, the final one there, which you won't be able to see if you're listening to this, is the verbal and non-verbal. So
Right.
today we're going to look at some verbal strokes, both positive and negative, from
Hmm.
the child ego state.
Beautiful. And we're going to use some movies to do that.
Oh yeah,
Ooh.
it's our favorite. It's our favorite pastime, isn't it, Ollie? To look up
It is,
look up quotes and movies.
I'm seeing a theme going through there. We're just watching movies and talking about TA. That's all we're doing. And by the way, to the viewers and listeners, if you want to dig deeper into the ego states, those are the last 4 episodes of season 1. We go through ego energy and what are ego states, and then through the parent, child, and adult ego states. So a little bit more detail there.
Yeah, and actually on that, I might as well give a little recap of the child ego state, because the child ego state that houses all our kind of thoughts, memories, feelings that relate to our childhood, which still
Mm,
play out in every day, so we can still tap into some of that child
right.
energy, you might call it. And there's kind of two sides to the child when we are tapping into it, when we're expressing our child ego state. One is the adapted child. So in some
Mm-hmm.
way we're adapting to the world, or we're adapting in a relationship, or adapting in kind of how we ought to be in our head.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then there's the free child. And the free child is not really adapting. The free child likes to do whatever the free child likes to do. It's a very different energy, you know. And I think some of our quotes today will kind of reinforce, the slightly different type of energy when you're either you're giving a compliment
Mm.
or when you're being a bit kind of mean and nasty.
Ooh, mean and nasty. And also, we did want to look into the conditional and unconditional part. Do we not for today's episode?
Yeah, so I'll I'll just give a little bit of a background on that. Again, if you listen to the past ones, you'll know all about this. But a conditional piece of recognition, excuse me, is it's giving somebody a compliment or being negative towards them in relation to something that they've done. So it's something
Right.
that they've done or haven't done or have or don't have. So
Mm.
it's a kind of a behavior thing.
Hmm.
Whereas an unconditional, that's when we're making it about the person. So
Right.
it's not about what they've done or haven't done or ought to do or not to do. It's saying something about them as a
Mm.
person, which, of course, in some ways can make it very powerful, both if it's a positive stroke or a positive piece of recognition about them as a person, or of course, if it's a negative one. What does that
Mm.
sound like when somebody says something about you as a person that's condescending or degrading?
Mm.
That's, and again, we're all, we all have our own defenses to kind of put up against this, but
Sure.
when we hear it a lot, that's when it
Mm.
that's when it starts to get in at us. Do you know what I mean? So whether it's uh, either from our childhood, but everyday life, if we're getting a lot of negative stuff coming at us, it kind of
Sure.
wears us down a bit. In work, for example, or even on social media. If we're getting an awful lot
Mm.
of negative stuff coming at us, it starts to kind of get in at us. So this is to me, this is super important stuff to be talking about, Ollie.
You know what? The ironic thing about social media, and I know we didn't talk about this in the prep to the episode, but the
No.
ironic thing of social media is that even the amount of positive things that go on there can sometimes play a very tricky negative effect with us, right? So it actually does the opposite of what it might intend to be doing, to be honest.
And you know what? I'm just riffing here. I think we need to do an episode on this because I think you're exactly right. Too much of anything really is not so good for us, including a lot of a lot of positive perceptions. And that is
Mm.
a thing. Like, when people just put up the positive stuff on Facebook or TikTok, it's like it's over. We're overdoing it. It's like, oh,
Oh, you know what? I just remembered one thing when I want to say about 20, 22, 23 years old. My friend gave me a whole folder of short motivational kind of quotes and audios, but it was for 2 hours long. So it was 2 hours long. So it was a long listen. And I remember I was listening to it on repeat. And at some point, I feel like I feel over motivated. Like I don't need that much, to be honest.
you must have been exhausted,
Very.
exhausted with positivity.
I think I was. And listen, I think it's great if we take these strokes from the child ego state and put them into practice because we've prepared some great quotes.
I think we have.
So why don't you kick us off, Jason?
Okay, so myself and Ollie were thinking about how could we do this. So in terms of both the positive strokes or recognition and the negative strokes or recognition from the child ego state. So the way it's kind of lined up is I'm going to do one and then Ollie's going to do one. And sometimes they'll be positive and sometimes they'll be negative. Okay, so my first one. So a positive stroke from the child ego state is you have such a pretty face. You should be a Christmas card. Right? That's from the movie Elf, right? And actually, that would probably be an unconditional positive stroke because it's about a person's face, which means
Mm.
they can't really do an awful lot about their face, right? So it's a positive, unconditional stroke. You have such a pretty face. You should be a Christmas card.
But I just imagine hearing that into my direction. That would sound so great, wouldn't it?
Warming, isn't it?
It is. It is. I've got the flip side of Elf, a negative stroke. Also said by Buddy from the movie. Why don't you just say it? I'm the worst toy maker in the world. I'm a cotton-headed ninny muggins.
Remember, they were stunned. The elves were stunned that he actually said it. Cotton-headed ninny muggins, which we
And
looked
it's
up actually. Remember?
yeah, we did.
In terms of what is that? What is a cotton-headed ninny muggins? And what was a cotton-headed means your brain is made of cotton wool.
Yes.
So that's so
But it's
severe.
also the thing about this phrase is that it's aimed at the self. So it's kind of a
Right.
self-criticism, right? Versus kind of criticizing someone else.
Spot on. So it's a negative, unconditional stroke because it's about his
Hmm.
brain. You know what I mean? So my brain. What can how do you change your brain from being cotton wool? Is the kind of thing there. If he's saying
Mm.
it's made of it, so it's quite a
All
put
right.
down. At least in the elf world, it was extreme put down in the elf world. Who's the actor again? Do you remember?
Will Ferrell, I
Will
think that's the
Ferrell.
name.
Yeah,
Mm.
because funny enough, I have another Will Ferrell quote. I just realized I hadn't put it together. Okay, let's see how this one goes. I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
Ooh.
That's from Ron Burgundy. So again, the news anchor man. But again, it's interesting because here's Will again doing uh, a stroke to himself or his
True.
character anyway, doing a stroke to himself. So that's a positive, unconditional stroke. I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal, right? So he's kind of through his child ego state, he's making his ego bigger, as we would say.
And it sounds like a very good salesman. I'll do the flip side of this and I'll take another. By the way, I just wanted to acknowledge one thing. We're expanding our metaverse of movies. It's not just Robin
That's
Williams
true.
and Tom Hanks. Now we've expanded. The next one, I'll actually go with the negative stroke, and it's from a movie that I really like, a trilogy of movies that I really like, from Back to the Future. What's the matter, McFly? You chicken? So it's Biff Tannen always taunting the main character, Marty McFly, in all ages, from the Wild Wild West to the futuristic was it 20? It's actually, oh, I think it was 2019 at some point. So it was just a
Oh,
few
right.
years
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
So he was always taunting him. Are you chicken? Kind of taking him to do stuff that he really didn't want to do.
That's right. Taunting him from his own child ego state, trying to hook Marty's child ego state, to respond. Very good. Very good. I love that one.
Yeah, and it triggered Marty to act impulsively without really thinking a lot. So,
That's right. That's right. And he learned to change that behavior,
mm,
right?
yep.
If you look at the movies, he doesn't get hooked
Ooh,
so much. So he's actually
that's
changed that.
so those hooks eventually helped him to, or those kind of tauntings helped him eventually to grow his adult ego state. Would that be correct to say?
Bingo. Yeah, yeah. To not react the same way or spot when he was getting kind of
Triggered.
enticed into
Mm,
something that's not good for him, that's not okay for him. So that's
wow.
that's behavior over time. Very
And
good.
there you go.
Okay.
Growth of the character within the movie. Amazing. That's great.
My God, we're becoming film critics here, by the way. We should maybe that's the future. No, we don't want to be film critics. There's too much criticism going on there. Too much negative strokes. Okay, so I've got a positive stroke here.
Mm.
Again from a movie, but a series of very, very famous books. So, if you live to be 100, I want to be. I want to live to be 100 minus 1 day, so I never have to live without you.
Aw.
Oh, that's Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh.
It's it's such a warm phrase. Like the first one you had, I think it was Elf from
Yes.
that your face is like a Christmas card, and this one they kind of make you feel warm. Independent if you receive them or just hear them, it makes you feel warm, doesn't it?
Yeah, that one in particular is quite deep, isn't it? It's like,
It
I
is,
want to live. I want to live forever with you, apart from 1 day.
and not a single day without you. Just maybe a single day, but that's it.
That's it. That's it. Time over. Fantastic. You've got another one, don't you?
So I'm gonna flip the switch right now. I'm not gonna do a negative. I'm not gonna be the bad cop doing the negative strokes. I'm gonna give you a positive stroke also from Winnie the Pooh. You're braver than you believe, and stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. So this is Christopher Robin's quote as a reminder that anyone is capable of more than we think. It's also a great motivational quote, I think.
Isn't it beautiful? Imagine just telling yourself that every morning.
In the mirror.
Yeah, well, why not?
Hmm.
It's very, very. I think everything there is lovely. It's really reinforcing, isn't it? It lifts the child, right? The
Right.
child ego stage suddenly goes whoop with a bit of confidence.
That is true. It does. But even if you, again, with all the quotes that we were talking about, they make you feel a certain way independently if you hear them directly at you or you
Mm,
just hear them being said. I think this is one of those quotes as well
yeah,
that you hear it from a side and you say, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's true. Like if I might be braver than I believe. I might be stronger than I seem, and I might be smarter than anyone thinks." Which is
that's
cool.
really, really insightful, actually, Ollie. We hadn't talked about this, but you're spot on because what we're uh, also connecting with there is when we hear others giving positive or negative strokes to others or even to themselves.
Hmm.
If we're there and we hear it, we get affected by it
Right.
in some way. Do you know what I mean? So if somebody's being very, very kind of mean and nasty to somebody else, let's say in a workplace, um,
Hmm.
and we're just within earshot, it affects us. Like we pick up that energy, and sometimes we don't know what to do with it. Like, should we intervene? Should we not intervene? What happens? But we're actually being affected, both positive, negatively. So if there's a lot of positive stuff, it's great. Like, oh yeah, geez, I'd like to work for I'd like to work for that manager, the way he or she gives some great, positive strokes. But then also, oh my God, I wouldn't like to be the person receiving that negative criticism. So just by being around it, we get affected, right?
True. That is very true. And I think whenever we think about the workplace, the strokes from the child ego state don't really are not the first things that come to
Right,
mind, but they're
right.
really, really important. And we'll get to that later in the episode. I think we've got one more quote.
One
I'm
one more
gonna
negative and one more positive. So I think you've got the last negative. Thank goodness.
I've got I've got the last negative, and actually it's going to be a very short one, but I think it's a theme across that movie that I'm taking it from. Uh, you're a squib. Does that tell you anything? So it's Darko Malfoy from Harry Potter series, and he's taunting, well, I think he's taunting a lot of people throughout the series, but that was Neville Longbottom. So one
Oh, is
of
that
Harry
who he's
Potter's
aiming it
friends.
at? Okay,
Yeah, he
yeah.
was aiming it, and squib meaning a derogatory form of someone born into a magical family but without magical abilities. So it's
Ah,
kind of
goodness.
it's taunting and it's kind of shaming the other person for
It's
just,
harsh, yeah.
and
And
sounds
it's
unconditional as well. It's not something that that person had control over at all. They were just born
yeah,
into that family.
yeah, yeah. But when you get into the definition, it's also looking at unconditional stuff, which is you're no good at magic.
Yeah.
That's, so not only you're born into that family, you're also no good at magic. The kind of, it's like, that's not very nice. Interesting. When I looked some negatives, I came across one of my least favorite characters in Harry Potter, which is Dolores Umbridge. I don't know if you remember Dolores, but she's pretty.
Mhm.
She always wore these kind of pink dresses and looked nice. Looked like she's, somebody's nice auntie. But oh my goodness, she'd said some terrible, terrible things. Um, one of them being, I really hate children was one of them. Um, I told you, Mr. Potter, naughty children deserve to be punished. It's like, oh my God, there's so
Kind of a
many.
statement, isn't it?
Oh, terrible, terrible stuff. But they're all from the parents, not the child ego state. But you certainly feel them in your child ego state. So I'll wrap up with one final nice one. One. Let's end on a high. Let's end on a high note.
I know.
Some people are worth melting for. That's Olaf. Olaf the snowman. Some people are just worth melting for.
Oh, I think it's Jason using the baseball term. It's three for three. You had three quotes, and all of them made me melt. Kind of, they made me feel very warm.
Isn't it so nice just to hear them? Isn't it so nice?
Very true. It is very nice to hear them. And you know what? Because a lot of these movies that we talked about, well, movies and cartoons that we talked about, um, they have a cultural aspect to it. So there's a lot of kind of there's magicians, there's the cult of magicians,
Mm,
there's
mm.
going into the past in the Wild Wild West with Back to the Future, going to the future. We also talked about how different things from the child ego state could be perceived in a cultural aspect. So I mean, for example, from the, say, Irish perspective and from the Ukrainian perspective, some phrases could be perceived very, very differently,
Oh
couldn't they?
yeah. Oh, big time. Um, which is risky, right? So
Hmm.
some obviously some phrases don't carry well
No.
within one culture to another culture, and particular around humor.
Hmm.
So like if we think about the free child, there's a lot of humor in and cheekiness in the free child, and we all know it. Like if we want to have a good time, we go out with our friends to the pub and just laugh about the most random things and kind of joke and slag, as we'd say in Ireland, which is make fun of each other. So that's
Right.
one of the big pastimes the Irish culture certainly likes to do is make fun of each other in a kind of derogatory way. Like we're actually, again, I don't know where the word slag comes from, but that's we say we're slagging each other. But is friendly banter
Right.
if you're part of the group, right? If you
Hmm.
know it's friendly banter, right? But I think there was one of our colleagues recently that was talking about being over, right? Ollie, do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah, I remember that specifically, and I think part having this friendly banter is part of the crack, isn't
Yes, that's right. That's another one.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember one of our colleagues when we were in a team setting together, and they were sharing that I wasn't sure if I did something wrong or is everything okay, right? So why is that directed as a joke at me and kind of didn't she wasn't sure whether or not it was actually something okay or something went wrong. But then with time, the person understood, yeah, everything's fine. It's just the way the way people communicate.
Yeah, I think somebody said to her, no, no, if somebody's um, kind of teasing you, you're now part of the group. So they feel comfortable enough to tease you that you're now part of the group, which is kind of a strange psychological twist. But
Eh,
then she felt really at ease that, oh, I'm actually part of the group that they feel comfortable enough to make a joke out of something I'm doing or
Right.
not doing or whatever, something I was saying and not
And
saying.
it takes effort to understand that. It's not very straightforward to understand that. That's why taking effort and taking the time to understand, okay, is that okay? Or is that what
Yeah,
kind of joke is that? Is
yeah.
that is that
Have I
directly
done
at me?
something wrong, or
Exactly. But I can
have I done
resonate.
something right?
I can definitely resonate with that because when I was a kid, my father's family would get together a lot often, and we would get together on Easter holidays or Christmas, and it's a big family, so it would be about like 30 people. So pretty huge,
Yeah,
sitting at the table together, a lot of food, and they would crack such horrific jokes at each other that with the phrases that you said, the quotes from the movie said that made me feel warm. Then I was just shocked. How could people speak to each other like that and laugh? So, and it was going from the child to the child. Basically, when you said from the child to the child, it was just they were just picking at each other, but they were having a lot of fun, and you could see that that had a positive connotation to it, and they were maybe even having a therapeutic conversation in
mm,
those kind of jokes together. And they didn't feel negative once they got off the table. They continued all that, banter, so to speak. But for me as a kid, it was, what's going on? This it seems like I'm in a kind of a semi-war zone between in a family, and they
yeah.
were just shooting jokes at each other, and they were pretty harsh sometimes. But everyone was laughing, and everyone took it as a very kind of positive thing.
Yeah, again, we're connecting there. It's a brilliant, example, Ali, because it's connecting again with the observer. So you as a little person, is observing this and thinking, what it's confusing. What's going on? They're saying such mean, nasty things to each other, and it was challenging your adapted child
Hmm.
because your adapted child was going, "Hey, this is not polite." I'm told like I'm not allowed to do this, right? This is not polite. So why are they doing it to each other? So it's a bit bamboozling to think, oh, is this okay? Is this what are they being mean? But then why are they laughing? So it's that cultural stuff is so significant. Uh, and again, fun to play with. I mean, I think in the end you realized, they are actually having fun, even though what they're saying is mean and nasty.
Fast forwarding 30 years from then,
Yeah.
I do the same at
No.
home. Maybe not as harsh,
Yeah.
but kind of with my son, but I do take time to explain, that's a joke. So don't take it too seriously.
Yeah, but also again, if we think about movies and what was on TV, we have kids, so sometimes we might kind of say to our kids, "Hey, watch this. I used to love this when I was a kid." And you put on and you go, "Oh my God, this is so." There's some stuff in this that's so inappropriate, in terms of the language or whatever, what you were
Oh yeah.
seeing, and you realize, gosh, I didn't clock that when I was younger. You know what I mean? So thankfully, times are changing. So some of this is cooling down.
Right.
What people used to get away with, even out of fun and humor. Thankfully now is starting to be kind of
Mm,
knocked and shaped a bit better.
right. Right.
You know?
Oh, listen, and this kind of greatly positions us to one of the things that we wanted to talk about is how you can use the positive strokes or not necessarily positive, but
Yeah.
any strokes from the child in a workplace. And I'd want to start from a question to you because you've done quite a few trainings with different, big and small companies. How have you seen this being used, the strokes from the child ego state being used maybe more consciously or less consciously at workspaces of different sizes and shapes?
Yeah, it's a really important topic and strategy, actually, to
Mm.
help teams bond, to help
Ooh.
people work better together. Do you know? Because we all have a child ego state, right? And sometimes we
Mm.
forget
Yeah.
that in work. Sometimes we're being so adult and working from the adult, or sometimes we're actually slipping into the parent too often. So we need to remember, the child ego state is where a lot of the fun happens. So we do have to have a little bit of fun, a little bit of pastiming that's enjoyable. And all the research shows that's what bonds a team. It's why
Mm.
people often love kind of that's why they call team bonding exercises, where they go out and they might do something physical and break
Yeah.
down these barriers. Everybody just sees each other as people, not as kind of roles. So the I would say there's not enough free child energy happening in workplaces. There's a
Right.
lot of pressure. There's a lot of seriousness and responsibility. So you need to counterbalance that with a little bit of
Mm.
free child fun. And ironically, during COVID, there was a lot more of that because people made an effort to,
Mm,
go to quizzes or be nicer to each other and check in with each other and that kind of stuff. So one of the very nice things about COVID was when we all realized we're in this together, and it's stressful
right.
that we started to connect with other people's free child and child ego state a lot more. But to come back to your question, Ollie, so this can be used a lot to diffuse pressure. You know
Mm.
what I mean? So in a meeting, even starting a meeting with a little bit of kind of free child humor, telling a funny story, or did you see this the other day? Did you watch that on Netflix? That kind of stuff. And again, a mechanism when a meeting becomes really, really serious,
Right.
where it's too serious. Like there, you can see everybody's kind of frowning. It's like if somebody interjects with something lighter, all of a sudden they're a bit more laid back and having relaxed a bit. And a lot of people do this as well in presentations. Like if you're doing a huge presentation to like
Right.
hundreds of thousands of people, one of the first things you might do is tell a wee anecdote that's funny or a joke, and that then settles the crowd. It's like, oh, okay,
Mm.
yeah, this is, I like this guy or woman or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, okay, it just eases the tension if it's done
Right.
intentionally, with a caveat that, of course, some humor, is not for everybody's taste. So whatever the humor is, it has to be kind of, you got to know your crowd, know your audience. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
It does make a lot of sense. I think the diffuser analogy really resonates with me, and I think it gives a great perspective into the child can allow everyone to be a little bit more adult, even, so it's kind of
Yes.
it allows everyone to kind of relax and tone down a bit. I think the way that I've seen it manifest in my job, I'd take it from the adapted child and from the free child. So from the adapted child, what it really helps me to do is observe.
Mm,
Because a lot
mm,
of the time from the adapted child, you kind of observe, you see what's going on, you kind of see the tendencies. Yes, it does help you to adapt, and I think sometimes you do have to adapt to what's going on,
very much so.
especially if it's a system that you're put into and you have to recognize how it works. That, for example, in a corporation is kind of crucial. You have to understand how it works to progress if that's what you want with your career. And with the free child, what I found, and one of my favorite things to do ever is brainstorming, right? So it's kind of you just you take off all the filters. You don't have any filters. You just introject every idea that you have, rational or completely irrational, maybe impossible even. But that's a great invitation and kind of to open up that free child, and especially sometimes it's really really hard to do that because we're used to use our adult
Mm,
in
mm,
work. Brainstorming could be kind of a challenge even for
mm.
everyone to open up and just have that free child energy going out. But that's the way it's helped me a
Yeah.
lot in those two things. So the adapted child would help me kind of observe and see things, whilst the free child would help me just go a little bit wild and have fun, have
Yeah,
fun
well,
in
and
a
that
way of
creative
brainstorming.
side, like you're
Yes,
saying, like the free child, positive free child, is all about creativeness. If you can get
true,
into that energy and think about lots of things. But actually, if we come back to strokes, the other thing is, a lot of people hold back on giving positive recognition.
true.
Because sometimes their adapted child is too kind of, oh, I don't know if I should or shouldn't, da da da. It's like, no, no, do it. If you see something nice, say it,
Yeah,
because it'll make the other person feel good and you'll feel good. So there's a phrase, catch people being successful. So, feed it back to them.
yeah.
So give them that stroke. It is just very good all around. And we've got a lack of it. So we actually need to do more. I really like what you did there. Go,
Mm.
oh wow, that was brilliant. Wow, we hadn't thought about that. Fantastic. That's just good value, just good karma, right?
It's true. And I think that when it's in brainstorming, I remember when something happens and somebody gives an idea, genuinely, a lot of the times I would think, I really love that idea. And I would say that out loud. And that enhances everyone to go further,
Brilliant.
further, further, so it kind of builds upon it. It's a yes and if you use what is it, the comedian's arsenal, right? It's a yes and, yes and, yes
Yeah.
and, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's build it up. Right. So, how do you think we've progressed so far with strokes in action from the
Ali,
child ego state?
I think we could go on for another half an hour, but we better not.
Yeah.
We better wrap it up. But I think we've done a very good. We've done it honor, if that makes sense. I think we've put it together, particularly the quotes. I'll be thinking about some of them later on today. I might share some with my kids just because I can. But yeah, I think we've done a really good quote, a good work on it. But also, I think for there's a couple of future things that
Yes.
to work on. One of them as well in the child ego state is called magical thinking, which I'd like to
Mm.
talk about that in a future episode because that can both be positive and negative, or sometimes even very destructive. So that's for a future. But I think for now, strokes in action from the child ego state. Boom! You did a brilliant job,
Mm.
Ollie.
Oh, thank you so much, Jason. It was a pleasure doing this episode with you. Thank you so much. All your quotes made me feel warm. What about our next episode, Jason? What are we going to talk about?
The final one on strokes in action, because we've done the parent, we've done the child today, so we're going to do strokes in action from the adult ego state.
Ooh, can't wait to see that one. Ooh, can't well, not even see it, record it. Ha! Doing
Even
better.
better.
So, dear viewers, dear listeners, thank you so much for being with us on this episode of OK Everyday, where Jason and I talked about stroking in action from the child ego state. If you did like the video, please press that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're interested in TA content, amazing. Subscribe and press that subscribe button, and we'll keep you informed of every OK Everyday episodes coming out on YouTube and Spotify. In any case, we really hope that you stay okay
Every day.
every day.